have one of these.
Oh, yes, we'll need that. Are you learning the program? I don't have it memorized yet. I was unfamiliar with this first piece, the Star-Spangled something, banner, I guess it is, Star-Spangled Banner.
We are going to talk about that one.
Oh, okay, all right. Arranged by some guy named Layden. That would be Norman Layden, a wonderful human being and musician here in Portland. But we digress already. I apologize. I'm Robert McBride, Vol Classical FM in Portland, preset number 1 on the radio of everyone in this room. Is that correct? Yeah, okay, I hope so. And this guy over here, you may recognize as Carlos Kalmar, the music director of the Oregon Symphony.
Good evening. Hey. Good evening.
And this young man in the middle, who's actually not quite as young as he looks, is a composer from Thailand who's featured tonight on actually the second piece after the Star-Spangled Banner. Would you say your name so you get the pronunciation right?
My name is Narong, Prangcharoen.
Narong, Prangcharoen. There will be... Yes, thank you. Welcome in. Narong's first visit to Portland, and I had the honor of having dinner with him last night at one of the 6 trillion Thai restaurants in Portland. And you gave me a CD last night of your music, including the piece you'll hear tonight. Thank you. And my first thought was that I would take that home and listen to it. And my second thought was, no, I want to have the full force of that music fresh tonight, just like everyone else in the hall.
My only advice when you listen to the piece that please do not listen to the piece we are going to play tonight in your car.
Oh.
Yeah, the police might like it because they will get money out of you. But oh boy.
Is it fast?
It's not so much about, it's partly fast, but that's not the point. It's so high energy. It's incredible that you like listen to it and leave. Just.
But officer.
Yeah, officer, it was the music.
I was listening to a phenomenon on my radio. Now, reading about your music is intriguing because Narong likes to write music sometimes, and including in this piece, inspired by nature and the way nature affects our lives and how we respond to it. And also about the human condition, our minds, our bodies, the way they interact and influence each other. Would you like to talk about either or both of those?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, well, I write music that you guys can relate it to, right? Because if we talk about heaven, maybe you don't really, you have a vague image of heaven. But then if I talk about coffee house, then you're like, okay, here we are. This is a coffee house, right? So you have a good connection between them. That's why I choose to write something about nature, you know, that just happened. I wrote the piece for tsunami. When it happened, we lost like 200,000 people die in that event. I wrote a piece for cyclone Nargis when it happened in Burma, you know. So those kind of image that people can connect, you know, and it's part of history, it's part of, you know, our nature, it's part of ourselves as human being, you know. So I love to do like my art connected to those stuff instead of writing something that I never have a chance to see or I never have a chance to experience.
And this piece has been very successful for you, which is great. It's making you famous. You've had performances all over the place. It's nice.
Yes.
Including, Carlos, you've done this before.
Well, the thing is, my story with this piece, although brief, it's quite something because I remember that in the year, I don't know which year, doesn't really matter. One year when we were thinking about programming in Chicago, in the festival I conduct in the summer, Jim Palermo, at that time president of the festival and artistic director, said, I just heard a piece. You have to listen to this. It's completely, what we call, it's wacky. And whenever somebody tells me, this is really wacky, my ears go like, yeah? And then I listened and I immediately said, oh, we have to program this. This is so outright. It's just, I mean, yeah, the piece is called Phenomenon, but it's a phenomenal piece. It's as simple as that. And also it works very well in any setting, including outside setting, because in Chicago we have to be careful not to choose pieces that are insanely quiet. Quiet is not a thing that you will remember after this, hearing this piece. And so we did, and we built a program actually all of kind of Asian-infused music, and that's it. And it was wildly successful, and ever since I have thought, let's bring it to Oregon. And little side story, I have one of my musicians here on this stage, I can say it, a tiny lady who is extremely opinionated. I really like her. She always says, a concert has to start with something loud and fast to get your attention. Because she noticed that I have a tendency sometimes to ease you into a concert with very murmurs and slow music so that you can snore after 3 minutes. And I thought, well, just to satisfy everybody's needs, this is the piece.
Now, phenomenon in the title refers in part to a particular phenomenon in Thailand that has to do with Buddhism, which I had never heard of. I'm sorry. Could you talk about that a little bit, this light coming out of the river?
Yeah. In Thailand, we have one phenomena that happens every year. It's happened toward the Buddhist Lent Day finish. And they have a fireball, they call it Naga fireball, came up from Mekong River, going up from underwater and floating to the sky and disappear. No ashes coming down, no sound. Because when you do a firework, you hear the sound, right? You hear explosion sound, like, you know. But in this case, it's just like a bright yellow or bright light that going from underwater and then floating to the sky and disappear. And people went crazy because no one can prove that this is man-made, this is, not real, this is, it's still like a mysterious story. And every year people commute to go to that city close to Mekong River to see that light coming up every year. So I feel like, wow, that's really a good, story that I should tell other people, that I should write about. So I start writing about it. I start doing more research on it. And that's a mythical story about Lord Buddha came back from heaven after he, went to heaven to kind of like talk to his mother, like, teaching her like philosophy of Buddhism. And then he came back. And the day that he came back is at the day that the Buddhist Lent Day finished. So the Naga, which is a long snake, more like a dragon mixed with a snake, doing a firework to salute his return from heaven. So they have like a Naga fireball from underwater going up to heaven to kind of salute his, return. And, then I like, wow, this is just a great story, and it's really, really inspired me to write the piece. Because in the piece you hear like crazy opening because everybody just drive there, right? Loud, people talk, so you can't even hear much like one line because it's like a lot of line and interrupted. And you have a scene of underwater with no melody. It's just sound effect that move a little bit. Then the fireballs start to go up to the surface of the water. You start to have a little melody, right? And then it's still like going up and down with the sound effect. Until it starts floating, then you start to hear explosion and people kind of, applause with all the string plus punctuation that it happened. And it ends with really loud section, like 1 or 2 minutes. Not just loud, but it's like exciting music. You don't feel that it's loud for 2 minutes, but you feel like exciting for 2 minutes, and that's how it ends.
I have this fantasy of this happening in the Willamette River in downtown Portland tonight. As you guys are playing this thing rises up to the top of the water. People freak out.
Yeah, I thought, of course, about the story that Narong just told us, and on one side you can follow when you attended our pre-concert talks, you can actually follow what Narong just said. That's exactly the piece. However, if you don't know much about the piece and maybe somebody explains to you that it is a phenomenon of something pretty much unexplainable that travels from, aside from, first of all, we have a gathering of thousands of people, which is the beginning, and then you hear something erupting and going to heaven. You don't need to know where and what exactly it is to understand the piece. One of the most fascinating things for me, aside from, yes, it's intricate. It captures extremely well the language of Western-influenced Thai music, if I can say that. And last but not least, one of the things I really like is the ending of the piece. Because the ending is, now that you heard, it's light going up, and then it disappears, you understand the ending. And that's quite an undertaking to write it that way. I think that's really good writing.
For a composer who, at the time, was just, 31, I think, when you wrote this? Yeah, so I can't wait to hear it. What do you think of our fair city now that you've had a chance to look around a little?
Oh, I walk around. Well, actually, since yesterday, I think I really, really like this city a lot. It doesn't feel like, it's more like warm welcome, like I've been to like all the big city. And it seems like everybody, like every city has just tall building and empty, right? It's kind of cold. Like I love to go to New York for fun, but I don't want to live there, right? Because it's kind of like a lot of building, and I came from Bangkok, right? We have a lot of tall building, and that's it. It's nothing else. But when I walk around here, I have a friend that come from West Virginia to help me this weekend, and I actually talk to him about, this is such a good city to live in. It's like, it feels like it's not just tall building, but do you have a good neighborhood that I walk around, I feel like, okay, no one gonna stalk me and do something bad. It's not like you walk in Chicago at night that people will walk after you, asking for something. But here I walk at night, it's still safe, and I think like all the environment, weather is really good,
Here we walk and we approach you at night for sure, but we want to drink a beer with you.
Yes, that's a good thing.
How do you think your piece will enjoy being on a concert with the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto and the Prokofiev Fifth Symphony? Will it be a happy phenomenon?
Well, I think so, yes. It's a lot of good contrast. It's, like you have a sip of everything, right? And the mood of each piece is a lot different, and you're going to hear. Hilary, I sat down right there, listened to her rehearsal today, and I have to Facebook now about her. Like I do a Facebook, from my phone, that I just listen to her play rehearsal, and that is like really, really, really good musician. And the orchestra work, first of all, Oregon Symphony is like, wow. Like I listened to the rehearsal, it's like, wow, this is, like one of the best performance rehearsal that I have with this piece. Because sometimes you go to orchestra and they tear the piece away, like they tear the piece down, because they don't want to rehearse, they don't want to practice, But this is never gonna happen. Like tonight you can have a blast. Like, like if you like that piece like I do, then you can have a blast of the piece, and the Tchaikovsky gonna be like great, like the way that, Hilary worked with orchestra, and, I think Prokofiev gonna be great. Well, you are with a good person, everything in the good hands, so, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Carlos, thank you for getting Hilary Hahn here to play in Portland, finally. I've been a fan of hers for a long time. And I guess she has been to Portland, but she hasn't performed here, so I haven't met her yet, so I don't know why she was here.
Hilary told all of us that actually she's right now in one of the favorite spots of the world, the Northwest, meaning she said California, north of San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, BC. That's That's the place. She has many friends. Why she never performed with the Oregon Symphony? It's one of those mysteries. It just happens because, trust me, the Oregon Symphony, myself, we have tried, but Hilary is kind of busy. It doesn't work all the time. But finally we got her. I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, she's a big star. And her recordings will be are on sale at the Classical Millennium table in the lobby tonight and tomorrow night and the next night, including her brand new recording of the Tchaikovsky Concerto, which she's going to play on this stage tonight. And she will be autographing CDs at intermission, so you'll have a chance to meet her then. Get her autograph for me, since I haven't had a chance to meet her yet. The Tchaikovsky Concerto is just first-rate Tchaikovsky for me. It has everything that he had. It begins with this simple, elegant, almost Mozartian kind of sound, really builds up steam, which he could do so well at the end of both the first and third movements. It's just so exciting. So many beautiful melodies. It's just great. And it's amazing to think that it's yet another one of those pieces which was not understood for a long time and very harshly criticized.
Well, this piece, as far as history goes, is kind of a piece with which Tchaikovsky treated his depression. Very successfully, by the way. Tchaikovsky, who is really an interesting personality, I don't know whether I would have liked to meet him, because he's really his nerves and very, very strange man. Essentially what happened during this piece was written in Switzerland. And Tchaikovsky went to Switzerland to recover from a failed marriage and a divorce that was happening a little bit after. And the thing, even the idea that Tchaikovsky marries is crazy, completely wacky, as we say, because that was not really what Tchaikovsky should have done, and he was opposed to marriage. He was opposed to marrying this particular woman anyway. It was only downhill from the get-go, and then it went completely downhill. They were married 3 months. And he suffered a nervous breakdown, and he had kind of to be taken away even from Russia. He was in Switzerland. He was in constant contact with Nadezhda von Meck. Interesting enough for the Oregon Symphony, that supposedly he heard one of those days in a private concert a reading of Lalot's Symphonie Espagnole, which many of you might have heard with Joshua Bell playing just 10 days ago here with us. And that piece inspired him he said, wow, I have to write a great violin concerto. And the work just was it was flowing. It was easy for him, and he was very happy writing this piece. And actually this piece, considering Tchaikovsky, is quite a happy piece. Considering Tchaikovsky, which means it has some dark moments. Then he dedicated this piece to the very famous violinist Leopold Auer, which is kind of Jascha Heifetz of those days. And Auer simply said, this is not good. This is absolutely unplayable. End of story. I think 2 years gone by, Tchaikovsky was devastated by Leopold Auer telling him this, and then the piece was finally premiered in Vienna with the very famous Hans Richter conducting and Mr. Brodsky playing the violin. Under-rehearsed, new piece, difficult to the extent of impossible. It was not a success. And in Vienna at that time, there was the probably most famous music critic that we have ever witnessed in music history, Eduard Hanslick, who had a very, very sharp tongue. So I just thought I'd tell you what Hanslick said. Hanslick, his critique included words like, the violin is no longer played. It is pulled about, torn, beaten black and blue. And then he said, we see wild and vulgar faces, we hear curses in the music, we smell bad brandy. And he said, this is for us the first time that the horrid idea that there may be music that stinks to the ear. So it was kind of a downer. Of course, history proves that Hanslick was wrong, that Auer was wrong. Today, this is one of the, probably if not the most played violin concerto. It's pretty comparable to Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. What that does for the piano, this piece does for the violin. Requires still to this day a phenomenal violinist, and we are very, very thankful that Hilary is with us. And what is very, just one sentence from my very personal perspective is I have conducted this piece a lot. And it's always wonderful not only to have a soloist of such high standards like Hilary Hahn, but have a musician and partner with a musician who actually brings something new. And Hilary has some ideas we talked about, and we worked on that, and we came up with some solutions that are not what I call the usual, and that is incredibly exciting, and she is quite a phenomenon.
Hope you'll bring her back.
Working on it.
All right, he's working on it, he says. All right, so then, after intermission, Prokofiev, Symphony No. 5. I love this symphony. It's so powerful. And again, like there's so much Tchaikovsky in the violin concerto, there's so much Prokofiev in this Fifth Symphony. The beautiful melodies, motor-like rhythms, almost a machine-like character at the end, which is really fun. Hey, you'll be showing off some new percussionists in that, right?
Well, actually, I'm showing off more than only new percussionists. We have three. Well, that what you're referring to is not on stage.
Oh, okay.
But I'm showing off, at least for first time in subscription. We have a new timpani player, Jonathan Greeny. We have Silu Fai, who will be sitting in the viola. He's our new viola player. We have a new English horn player, Kyle Mustang. So we are in very, very good shape.
And so the other new percussionists will be showing up later in this season?
We are in negotiations about that.
Oh, okay. All right. We won't tread any further into that. Prokofiev 5, in your program notes, there's the story of the work's premiere, and it's incredibly powerful downbeat with Prokofiev on the podium. It's 1944, Second World War, Russia has suffered so much. Here's one of its greatest composers about to lead a performance of his new symphony, and as he starts, cannons are heard in the hall, a victory salute for the Russian forces who had won a battle, and they pause, and then the piece begins. Wow, what a moment.
In terms of the Russian history and the history of Russian music, the interesting point that can be made is that there has somehow you can, I wouldn't say the word compare, but you can analyze back to back Prokofiev Symphony No. 5 and Shostakovich Symphony No. 8. Both written during times of war, both kind of on the same topic. And it's interesting how two great minds take very different directions, also in what they actually want to write. And in terms of Prokofiev, this might even be fascinating because there were times in Prokofiev's life, earlier than this piece, where he was a little of a very rude, eerie writing person. I mean, the times when he wrote his opera The Fiery Angel, when his Symphony No. 3, those are pieces that I might one day conduct here. His Symphony No. 3 is a great piece, but it's very in your face. And in No. 5, when you think it's 1944, no happy times, and then comes Shostakovich and writes a symphony that is at times brutal and in the end very depressing. Very depressing. And we have played that here, and it made, I remember those concerts, it made a great effect on all of us that we shared this room together when we played that. And Prokofiev takes a very different approach. And his music, in a way, evoke the happiness of man, the force of the inner core of a human being, the human being as a triumphant. Because that's the main line. You will hear a variety of things. You will hear lyric melodies that will remind you of the language that Prokofiev displayed in Romeo and Juliet, which is one of his masterpieces, undoubtedly. You will hear some humor, very, in a way, like humor, that type. Yeah. And then you will hear a lot of force. Even you will hear, I believe in that, at the end of the first movement, this majestic build-up, that actually has something to do with war. Yeah, I think you hear the cannons and the force, but it always travels towards light, in the sense of bright light, in the sense of hope. And the making of this symphony also is unusual in that it does not follow the pattern of a classical symphony. Classical symphony being fast, slow, middle fast, very fast. And this symphony is slow, fast, slow, fast. And there is some depth and sorrow here and there in his music. Specifically, I would say his third movement. But then when this guy, Prokofiev, when he takes off in the last movement, he really takes off. And we had great fun rehearsing that.
And alas, we have to take off because our time is up. The Saturday night pre-concert chats are videotaped. Thank you, Joe. And you can watch them and listen to them at our website, allclassical.org. I'm Robert McBride. This is composer Narong Prangcharoen, whose music, Phenomenon, will be the first piece after our national anthem. Carlos Kalmar is the music director of the Oregon Symphony. It is so good to see you again.
I'm very happy to be with all of you. Enjoy.
Thank you.